What is happening out there, Roto Scouts football fans? Been a minute since we said that. Been less time since we talked to you guys. Just finished up the baseball show not half hour ago. Probably going to be talking to the same crowd. I see Noble RD's already made the trip over. Cujo's here for football. Football is back. That's right. Opening night for the NFL season. Always goes so quick. I talked about it seemingly 2 weeks ago when the baseball season was like at opening day and how quickly we were going to get to here, beginning of September, through training camps, which always pop up so quickly at the beginning of August, late July. Just ridiculous how fast it goes. But here we are again. Good one to start things out. Dallas going into Philly, a little rivalry game, One of these teams certainly a little bit better than the other one last year, but we'll see where they land this year. Every opening day, a lot of hope anyway for every franchise out there, except for maybe the New York Jets. Got to take a shot at the Jets fans here and there. My Giants not exactly a lot more hopeful than they are, depending on what you're looking at. Could be significantly lower. Not a great time to be a New York football fan. But we'll see what happens. But definitely an interesting team about 90 minutes south in these Philadelphia Eagles. See what the hangover might look like. Most of their key players did not play through the preseason. Same thing on the other side. This could be a really ugly, sloppy, nasty, disgusting football game that does not pay off our expectations as far as what the quality of these players would typically be. Just to say that. We see that a lot in week one football, even week two sometimes. Especially when, you don't have a lot of, they played through camp, but not playing in preseason action, even just for a few series at game speed, seems to make a little bit of a difference for some guys. Not everybody. You've got some ludicrously high-end players in this game. We're not worried about it. We're not taking anything away from anybody for it. There's no way to quantify it anyway. But it is out there in the ether, right? This could be an ugly game. Could lead to decisions about maybe getting a little aggressive around on a showdown slate, special things like defense, like kickers. You've got a pair of decent kickers in this game to work with. So you could see some failed drives leading to kick attempts, leading to defenses holding up a little bit better than one might expect. Odds are Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts going to go out there, do their thing, score 2 touchdowns each on the ground and run away with the game, in a monster win and start the season, and they'll be off and running. And it's the Eagles. That's what they do. They've got excellent pass catchers across the board. Everybody's healthy up and down the lineup. They've got a couple capable backups and some depth on this team this year. John Dotson and John Mechie in the wide receiver camp. They've got Will Shipley at running back. Interesting backup options. Kylan Granson and Grant Calcaterra give them a little depth behind Dallas Goedert at the tight end position. But just primo starting options from the Eagles. No surprises. No real surprises on the other side. I'd say the one thing people might not be, well, 2 things. This team picked up George Pickens, which is a great pickup for them as far as a get down the field, big play type wide receiver. Be fun to see what he can finally do. Freed from the reins of Pittsburgh. But even there, last year, 13.3 yard average depth of target, garnered 35.95% of the air yard share, but only 3 touchdowns. I think we can improve on that number this year. CD cut his touchdown output in half last year, only had 6, but he played half the season without the starting quarterback. I think we do have to factor that in. Dak threw 11 touchdown passes last year, played 8 games, missed the final 8. Wasn't great in the games that he did play, but that had an impact. And then the other changeup for on the Dallas side is the presence of Javonte Williams and whatever he might be in the backfield. Lower end, never a guy I've been totally sold on. Was missing tackles pretty effectively early last year and then kind of fell off the board second half. Finished the year at 3.7 yards per attempt. Mediocre. We got a rookie in Jaden Blue as a backup there. Got Miles Sanders as a backup there. A couple interesting depth options. And then again, capable kickers, capable defense. But it's interesting up and down the board with both of these teams. We've got star caliber options. We've got a couple wild cards. Should be a fun one to build with. OMG Lowles is back. Andy's here. What's going on, guys? Who do you guys like today? I mean, loose. Look, it's a football show with one game to talk about, kind of loose. What are you guys looking at? How'd your drafts go? Everybody presumably done with their season-long drafts. I assume a lot of you guys were out there best ball drafting all summer long as well. Not a big best ball guy. Never got into it. One of these days I will. I keep threatening it. I'll get there eventually. But I was not drafting all summer long. Took me a minute to catch up once we got to season-long draft season. I was happy with my 2 drafts, though. I'm only doing 2 leagues this year, really, really pared down. I used to have public leagues all over the place, and didn't do any of that this year. Focusing on the 2 leagues with friends and so on. My one that I mentioned, the keepers on a baseball show, didn't have a first-round pick, and it's a super flex league, yada, yada, but we'll see how it comes out. I've got some high-end pieces on that team, and then I got basically every sleeper that I was hunting for, and every rookie upside keeper type. It's a 3-keeper league. And then the other one is a redraft league, and really, really happy with how my team came out there. Taking a bit of a flyer, I have 1 quarterback on the team, and his name is Trevor Lawrence. I think it's going to be a big year for Trevor Lawrence and that Jags offense. OMG Lowell's looking at the Philly onslaught, leave some salary. Yeah, so that's always a good spot to start talking, right? 10 people coming into the room here. I was obviously just trying to go through a little bit and kill a couple minutes there while we were waiting on some folks. But good way to get us started. Just the general shape of things with lineup building on Showdown. And one of the major concerns, obviously, is just the number of dupes on the most common lineups. And being tied for first is, if you're chopping a monster pot, $1 million on DraftKings tonight, I think $200K on the FanDuel slate tonight. If you're chopping that 3, 4, 5 ways, even 10 ways, taking $100K out of it, nothing wrong with that. Right? So we want to be hunting for those like 10 dupes or fewer type lineups when we're doing lineup builds, when we're running through sims and we have those numbers available to us. We're always looking to cut down on our potential duplication, gain some leverage on the field with some differentiated plays. And a lot of that has to do with what we're doing at the captain spot by working in some more of the skill players at the captain spot, not going with the most obvious, most straightforward thing. Super important on DraftKings is to get the quarterbacks in, and typically we're getting quarterbacks in the flex roles. More often than not, over the years, having the skill player, the correlated receiver in the captain spot for a little bit cheaper and getting the quarterback in the flex has paid off a little bit better pace. Don't have the data from last year immediately in front of me, so don't kill me if that didn't happen exactly that way just last year. But in an ongoing sense, it was more that way. OMG saying most lineups will have one of Pickens or Lamb, in my opinion. Absolutely. Yeah, those 2 guys are going to be very highly owned. I think Lamb was over 50% projected in the ownership numbers that I saw, and you would expect that Pickens would be up there in the mid-30s or even more. So yeah, it's very, very difficult to get to something completely unknown where you're the only person in there unless you've done something completely nuts. But there are definite easy paths to differentiation, and they're realistic, and you want to be realistic about what you're putting in the captain or MVP spot. But you've got options. It's not like we don't. Like, if you take one different first step, like let's say putting a completely, in my opinion, underappreciated Jake Ferguson into a captain spot or an MVP spot, you are completely differentiated out of the shell. That is just totally different, super low owned, and it helps you get to more unique constructions even by going to the super common guys. And you're still getting 7 catch, 2 touchdown type upside out of the tight end. He had a bad year last year. He was banged up throughout the season. He also was playing with no Dak Prescott throughout the season. For the first 8 games, he was a top 10 tight end. So I think there's an appreciable path through there. If you're going to one of the, not necessarily seedy, but more so George Pickens in the captain spot, and then maybe you're still including CD and you're doubling up there and putting him in the flex and riding more with Dallas, just by structuring it that way and then including the quarterback, you're getting a little bit of leverage compared to the people who straight line it through Dak and the captain, CD and the captain, and go the more obvious construction. Obviously, that's also putting them at a different price point than you. FanDuel has the multiplier this year. for salary. So we're 1.5x for salary on the FanDuel slate, and they've grown the lineup size by 1. So that's an important thing. It's basically the same game across sites now, which is good. So we'll take a look at some lineup builds in a little bit. But we definitely want to keep those things in mind. And then you want to keep in mind the effectiveness of kickers, the effectiveness of defense on showdown slates. They are important pieces that tend to get overowned, especially if you're looking at underdogs defense against a high-end scoring machine like Philly. But it is week 1. And again, most of Philly did not play through the preseason as far as game competition. So maybe it's a day where you pick off an underappreciated defense. And then you've got plenty of wild cards. What you don't want to go doing is putting like Hunter Lipke in there, right, at 0.5 fantasy point projection. You don't want to be going to the guys where it's like, all right, I need to rely on world-ending tragedies for 4 different guys before we hit this guy on the depth chart. Yeah, nobody's going to have them, but nobody's going to have them for a reason, right? Sometimes there are options, though, in that territory, like Luke Schoonmaker, however the hell you say that, first stumble, not completely dead at 2 points, DraftKings, a point and change FanDuel. You can consider the lower end projections because especially the backup tight end types, you get one solid catch that goes for a decent chunk of yards and gets into the end zone, and that pays off in a big way. So you want to consider anybody with a reasonable path toward realistic success on the field, and then at least with a point and or more in terms of the projections. Mechie at a 0, by the way, on FanDuel. Last I checked, still not available on the FanDuel slate. Was added for DK. They signed him, I think, end of last week or the week before. What are you guys looking at as far as trying to differentiate? Just going through some of the man for man. Again, Dak, the thing you like about the Cowboys offense, and it's probably going to be true of them again this year, is they throw the ball a lot. Right? They had better than a 60-40 split in favor of the pass last year, and that's going to hold up. And Dak is not bad. Just 6.9 yards per pass attempt last year, 4.1 air yards per attempt, the 7.9 intended air yards. He only threw 11 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. The season prior, though, and he's been in a weird on-off kind of a run over the last few years. Year before last, he threw for 4,500 yards and 36 touchdowns. He was QB4, I think, in fantasy points per game. Year before that, he only played 12 games, threw for 2,800 yards, 23 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, 7.3 yards per attempt that year. Last year, he was at 7.7 yards per attempt. The year before, 7.5, and then 8+ in 2 seasons prior to that. But in 2021, he threw for, again, nearly 4,500 yards, 37 touchdowns, and only 10 interceptions, 7.5 yards per attempt. Had 7 completions of 40 yards or better. He matched that number in 2023 as well. So Dak's a capable downfield thrower, capable of making every big pass, certainly capable of exceeding these numbers, and he throws the ball a lot. And now he's got a downfield weapon to go with CeeDee, a significant one. Again, 13.3 yard average depth of target last year while playing on a terrible passing team. I'm very curious to see what George Pickens does here. Just 3 touchdowns. He caught 4 passes a game. Did this reference change? It's certainly not yards per game. I don't know what that YPG was supposed to be. I'm trying to remember what some of these spots on the board were as I'm talking. Obviously, that's not yards per game. I got to figure out what that's supposed to be referencing. But this was catches. He was seeing a fair number of targets. I could see him coming right in the door, right around these numbers, 8 and change targets, spiking up to, in a big game, 10 to 12. Similar expectation to like what Devontae Smith's role is on the other side of this game. 7.5 targets a game last year. Major upside. Tons of catch potential, tons of touchdown potential. and big play potential. Solid downfield operators on both sides. But Pickens is going to be really interesting here. He checks in at just 8,000 on DK, 8,400 on FanDuel. More expensive, obviously, in the captain spot, but a very affordable captain for what the upside could look like. And you really don't need him to go crazy. Just a couple of deep catches could put us over the top if it stays more of a ugly kind of a game. Vegas-wise, by the way, forgot to mention, 47.5 point total. Philly favored by 8, 27 and change implied points for them. Just below 20 implied points on the other side. So obviously we're favoring the Eagles side of this one, but there's nothing to say that Dallas can't score. Working against Dallas in this passing game is going to be the fact that the Eagles were very, very good at defending the pass last year. Just 6.2 yards allowed per pass attempt. That ranked first overall. What might help Dak out a little bit is that the Eagles really, for as good as they were defending the pass, didn't rush the pass all that much. Just a 17.9% pressure rate. I believe that was a bottom 5 number in the league. Don't quote me on that, but low-ranked overall, low-ranked sack total. 13 interceptions for the season, but just, the yards per attempt, the ability to limit touchdown passes, limit scoring, limit tight ends pretty significantly could have an impact on Ferguson. CD, obviously, still the top receiver in this offense. Still going to be Dak's primary target, first read opportunities. He averaged 10-plus targets a game last year. 6.7 catches on a 7.5 yard, let's call it ADOT. Roughly 25% of the air yards, but again, dropped to 6 touchdowns on the season. He had 12 the year before. He's a much more significant receiver than what he put up. 70. Yeah, these two numbers got screwy. Something changed about the reference on these because this is not, he did not put up 79.6 yards per target. Maybe these two switched. What's the reference? Excuse me. All right, that's receiver 23, B to X. These are not 2023, by the way. B to X. Here to over there. And we were saying what? Fun with spreadsheets. 10 divided by 5 for yards per game. So that's probably where we went. Yeah, so it's got to be 9 divided by 5. So something changed in that table. So that one's yards per game, and then, yards per target here. Yards per target is just there on this board. 18. Yep, that looks right. So 7.9 yards per target. Pickens actually had 8.7 yards per target. But again, CD's going to lead this team in targets throughout the season outside of maybe a couple games. But Pickens a very solid 1A to go with CD, and there's nothing wrong with pairing these guys up. You obviously want to get a lot of the correlation in one direction or the other. You can get all three into a lineup, major upside. But keep in mind, you are dividing up the opportunities a little bit if you're going that route. Definitely would pay to work in a cheap Jake Ferguson around the edges. He saw 6 and change targets a game last year. Hauled in 4 of them, but was mediocre in terms of the yardage. 35 yards a game. Was under 40 yards, I believe, in every game through his second half. Missed a few games along the way there. 5.7 yards per target. Where did he peak? 6 catches, 95 yards in week 3 against Baltimore after a DNP in week 2 was his peak. Didn't put the ball in the end zone. Obviously disappointing season. Year before, Put 5 touchdowns in, had 761 yards, 10.7 yards per catch. Saw 102 targets across 17 games. That was in his second season, age 24 season. Only scored twice in the first season, but only saw 22 targets. So we're really riding on faith on that 102 targets, kind of returning some of the quality returning, the opportunities in the end zone getting converted. But damn it, Dak got hurt, week 8? Week 9. So he played just 7 games with Dak. And then he missed another 2 as the season went on. His snap share diminished a little bit. His week 11 game before a couple DMPs, he only saw 7 snaps before coming out of the game. So just really limited throughout the year last year. Definitely going to be a little bit of a shakeup as far as, where the targets are going and what the offense is going to look like with another big mouth to feed in Pickens there. But Ferguson should see, I would think 5 to 6 targets is still fair. And definitely has the upside to put the ball in the end zone. Philly defended the tight end position well, but he's got talent. And if he's going to be lower on for perceptions of lacking skill, given the numbers from last year, or just, not being 100% or whatever the case might be, and by all accounts, he is 100%, then that becomes an interesting player for me. And the ownership is making it look that way on the various sites as far as where he's projected ownership-wise. I think he's a sneaky captain. They throw him the ball twice in the end zone. You're off and running at those prices, a captain. Javonte, again, to me, never was my favorite running back to get to. Philly's rushing defense is also pretty good. 8th ranked, 4.3 yards per rush attempt allowed. They're a little bit more vulnerable there, but it's not like he was putting up anything significant. 3.7 yards per attempt, 1.9 before, 1.8 after contact. He scored 4 times. Did draw 4 targets a game in the passing game. Didn't really turn it into much. 4.9 yards per target. Didn't score in the passing game. Most of his work, just little dump-offs behind the line of scrimmage. I'm not completely sold. I don't love the upside, and I think there's going to be a fair amount of just sharing the ball. I think they're going to get some touches for Sanders. I think they're going to get some touches for Jaden Blue. Blue projecting out fairly well at a lower price. Kind of interesting. Too many notes. Just a 5th round pick, not crazy draft capital. But had interesting receiving numbers. His last year in college, 134 carries for 730 yards, 5.4 yard average, 8 touchdowns. But caught 42 of 61 targets as well. 368 yards and 6 touchdowns through the air. What is that? 8.8. Some of these are too small. 8.8 yard receiving average. So at least an interesting dynamic kind of a player. The little guy, just 5'9", 196. But definitely sneaky, potential creator of fantasy points. You get a couple touches in there. And again, not really competing with, anything overly special in Javonte Williams. Javonte had interesting numbers. I pulled up a note per our guys over at Pros. I mentioned the missed tackles. First half of the season ranked 13th in missed tackle rate, and then literally did not force a missed tackle the second half of the season. Running back 36 in fantasy points per game last year. Not special. Potentially better in this offense, but remains to be seen. And then just some interesting wild cards. Miles Sanders, 3.7 yards per rush attempt last season. Caught a couple balls, put one of them in the end zone, scored twice on the ground. just going to get backup run if anything at all. Just a few touches are projected here. If he happens to get more touches than we're expecting, that gets interesting in a hurry. That's why he is something of a option to throw in there as a shakeup. You don't, I think, want to go to him at captain. I don't think you want to go to too much of Tolbert Turpin at captain. But any one of those guys is a little bit of a lower owned, just, wild card type play in a lineup. I think there's quality there. If you want to get sneaky around pairing Turpin with the Cowboys defense and look to pick off the big kick return option, that's always there. You get Tolbert, not that many opportunities. 4.6 targets per game last season, but probably going to lose a little bit through here. Did see an 11.5 yard average depth of target, 18.85% air yard share, and scored 7 times. But we'll see what that volume is going to look like. I think the nature of the opportunities would stay the same, though. Getting some decent downfield looks, just fewer of them. So if you're buying, again, just cheap options, lower-owned options, it does pay to take a guy who could potentially just take the top off the defense and put up one big play, and that's all you need. Showdown slate, one big play can literally win you $1 million, or your share of $1 million. Schoonmaker, and then Flournoy, Brevin Span, Hunter Lepke down here. At the very best, these are total dart throws after Schoonmaker. He is on the board, a little bit more highly priced than the $200, $300 guys. I don't think you're really dipping down this way. You don't exactly have much in terms of target opportunities here. You don't really have many touches overall on the board here for the 4th string running back, the 3rd string tight end. So gets a little bit dicey when you go to those guys. Those are the type of guys that I'm saying you probably want to be leaving off the board. On the Eagles side, very, very expensive up at the top, but these guys are ridiculous. Jalen Hurts, not a ton of passing volume. Just threw the ball 24 times a game last year. 18 touchdown passes, 5 interceptions. Was terrific. 8.1 yards per pass attempt. He punched the ball in on the ground 14 times to go with the 18 touchdown passes. Just ridiculous when they get in close. It's almost unfair. Carried the ball 10 times a game for 4.2 yards per rush attempt. Solid dual threat quarterback. Nothing at all wrong with going to Jalen Hurts. He is easy. He is obvious, and he should be in a high number of lineups. He's also going to be very, very popular. He's going to be an extremely popular captain. I like getting quarterback shares in the flex role. That's going to apply to both sites now that we have the multiplier on both. Just pays to shave that price down a little bit with one of the less expensive, lower-owned skill players in the multiplier spot sometimes. And then you pad out with the Saquons of the world, the Jalen Hurtses of the world in the flex roles. Saquon obviously would make a dynamite captain, but he does at 16.8 on DraftKings in the captain role, at 21.6 on FanDuel, more to the point on in the MVP spot. He's a limiting factor as far as what else you can get into that lineup. That might render him lower owned than he otherwise ought to be as a multiplier guy. So it is probably worth trying to see what you can put together there, get to something low owned that still has quality. But it creates a challenge. He's also the best point creator in football when it comes to fantasy sports. 5.8 yards per rush attempt last season, 21.6 attempts per game, 125 yards. He scored 13 times on the ground, another 2 times through the air on his 2.7 targets per game. Not crazy significant involvement in the passing game, but put up 6.5 yards per target. Caught the ball out in front of the line of scrimmage just by a little bit compared to some of the other running backs. An involved pass catcher, a very, very capable pass catcher. But they call this number a little bit less because they're looking for a couple of their big wideouts. Got a very capable tight end to work with on this team. A lot of mouths to feed, but they spread the ball around fairly effectively. AJ, monster upside on any given slate. 7.5 targets per game last year. Put up 11.1 yards per target on a 12.1 yard ADOT, 7 touchdowns, a 36% air yard share. Devonta right there, though, 25% air yard share. He scored 8 times. He saw nearly 7 targets a game. That is a 1-1A situation. It's not a 1-2. Smith would be a rock-solid top receiver on a lot of teams. 9.1 yard average depth of target. Premium upside. Love the idea of a Smith captaincy. Smith MVP. It's a little bit lower price than everybody else. And if the ceiling is lower, it's marginally lower. So, very strong option that will probably be a little bit lower owned than some of the other major upside pieces. Nothing at all wrong with A.J. Brown in the captain role either. And again, if you can figure out how to get Saquon in there with quality elsewhere, fire away. The Eagles are going up against a Dallas defense that ranked 30th last year with 4.8 yards allowed per rush attempt, 29th with 7.9 yards allowed per pass attempt. They did garner a 30% pressure rate, 52 sacks on the season, so they were pressuring the quarterback a little bit and significantly more than the opposing team, but obviously that was leading to giving up quite a bit of yardage, fair amount of scoring. This is a very gettable defense, and obviously no longer a fairly significant piece of that defense. So definitely a targetable spot for Philly as far as putting points on the board. Outside of, again, these guys haven't played that much yet in 2025. Well, except for what they did in the very beginning of 2025. Goddard, very affordable on both sites. Another guy, just an excellent tight end overall. He only scored twice last year, but still saw 5.2 targets a game. Middle of the road type of average depth of target. That's not a bad number for a tight end. Just 10.6% of the air yards, but put up 9.5 yards per target. Was still nearly 50 yards a game on, not limited targets, but middle of the road kind of targeting. Premium upside, and I would expect that the touchdowns would at least have an opportunity to go up this year. Oh, come on. 2 last year, just 3 the year before, 3 the year before that. Last year it was 10 games, the year before that 14, 12 the year before that one. Had 4 touchdowns in 15 games in 21. 60-plus yards per game for 4 straight years prior to dipping to 55-8 last year. That's on a yards per game, no yards per 11.8 yards per reception, not per target on this particular board, is actually up year over year last year from the 10.0 the year before. It's more reminiscent of the 12.8 that he had in 2022. But he is now a 30-year-old tight end. So, I mean, there's something to watch as far as what the overall production looks like. But he's a capable fantasy scorer. Even in terms of, maybe he's more of a flex player, given the insignificant number of touchdowns, I would say, over the last couple of years. Maybe we're just looking at him for a solid number of catches at a cheap price, a little bit of yardage upside. And again, you are getting him against an exploitable defense, and there's nothing that would prevent them from looking in his direction in the end zone. And that's another one, kind of like what I was saying about Ferguson. If all eyes are on Saquon, AJ, Devonta Smith, the kicker, the defense, Dallas Goedert, Jake Ferguson, these guys, the tight ends tend to slide through, even with that being a narrative across Showdown for DFS. The tight ends still tend to slide through, and those guys score touchdowns, and those guys break single game slates. What's up, Swoosh Bang? Swoosh says, wait, this says NFL. Yeah, buddy, you missed the shortest MLB show of the season a little while ago. As Tismain says, just finished the MLB show on 2X. Would you do that in a half hour? OMG saying more curious as to what the Dallas run game is like. Yeah, I really don't have much faith in Javonte Williams, and we'll see what Jaden Blue's got to give us. I think there's going to be some touches there. I think you're going to see a couple touches for Miles Sanders. And I think you're going to see a team that throws the ball aggressively. We're going to see like a 68, 70% pass rate from Dallas, at least to start. I really think they're going to be flinging the ball all around, especially if they're going to get behind probably pretty quickly in this game. So I think the passing is going to be pretty heavy on the Dallas side, especially starting things out. And again, Dak is capable. That is a good thing for Dak. It's a good thing for Pickens, Ferguson, CD. Obviously less so for the running game. Downboard with the Eagles. Shipley, capable backup, got a lot of buzz in season long as a late round sleeper with all the wear and tear that went on to Saquon last year. Monster, scary volume for Saquon last year. But if anybody can handle it, it's that dude. But Shipley's on the board for a few touches. You plug him in 2,000, 3,000. You don't want him really at the captain spot, but 2,000, 3,400 across sites. Just 2.7 yards per attempt on very, very limited volume last season. Wasn't really involved in the passing game. Didn't get into the end zone, but should see a little bit of an uptick here. Had a good couple few in the preseason. Yeah, this note's going too far back, actually. If you care about week 1 of the preseason, he had a good game against the Bengals. Peaked at 4 carries for 77 yards. And a touchdown in the championship game against Washington. Had a 10-carry, 32-yard game in Week 18 against the Giants. 9 for 34 in Week 10 against these Cowboys. Again, you give him the ball a few times, you could make something happen. But this is not a reliable option. It's not a likely option to put up a big score unless you're just riding on something happening up here. John Dotson, John Mechie. We'll see where the ball goes. Limited targeting for both guys last season. Both guys can get down the field a little bit, though. 1 touchdown between the two. But you do have solid depth options here. So if they're getting out and they're running on the other side of the field, and everybody's focused over this way, and you get 1 or 2 deep looks for these guys, that could get you on the board awfully quick. So again, guys that can get down the field, break 1 big play for you in showdown format, especially when they come cheap, especially when they come with low ownership like these guys will, keeps them alive for being played and definitely can bend the slate. And that's what you need on these kind of slates. So again, we're advocating pretty strongly for the more realistic options that should see a look or two, rather than the more depthy options that are projected under a point. The 5th man in, the 4th man in, the 4th tight end types. The Kylan Gransons of the world. Technically, he's projected slightly ahead of Calcaterra here, even though Calcaterra is more expensive. I wouldn't really be looking for either one of those guys. 1.8 targets per game apiece. And then Darius Cooper costs nothing, but is also very unlikely to see any action here. That's basically it up and down. What are you guys looking at? Anybody I missed? Anybody we didn't talk enough about through there? Still working out the kinks. I mentioned Philly and Dallas. A lot of the starters didn't play through the preseason. I didn't do shows through the preseason. Still trying to remember what all these columns are. Remember where I got to click. These are all the individual positions, just most of the same stats. I don't think there's anything unique over here that we can go through. Red zone targeting, big play opportunities, drops, Forgot about that. We're calling drops Tonys. Obviously, you get a ton of red zone targeting on the big guys up top. CD and Pickens both saw 16 targets in the red zone. You would think that number will favor CD with them playing together. But both guys, rock solid targets. And again, you get a lot of depth of target operating down the field from Pickens, which should open things up for CD. Ferguson saw his opportunities for red zone targets. Didn't get any of them in the end zone in his mixed action. But again, I like the upside for some targeting to come back. The right day, the right opportunity to catch one in the end zone changes the nature of a showdown slate. And then Tolbert had 13 red zone targets. But again, I would think that goes down somewhat with the presence of Pickens. He did turn them into touchdowns, though. He scored 7 times. On the other side, Smith got a couple extra red zone targets. He had 11 to the 9 that AJ put up. 8 touchdowns to 7 touchdowns, but it was 13 games apiece. Neither guy played a full season, nor did Dallas Goedert. He had a little bit of targeting through some of these guys. But again, we're really looking right through there. I forgot I had lineups in here. There's a couple to start with. So we have with our, remember how I told you that Jake Ferguson would be really low owned in the captain role? That's a sub 1%. I meant to actually hide these because they're not mine. It's supposed to be like that. But yeah, Ferg, sub 1% in the old captain role on FanDuel. That cuts what I think is a pretty good looking little FanDuel lineup down to a 2 dupe. You know, your mileage may vary. Could be 5, could be 8. They tend to be a couple few higher than what we end up with here. But that's a real quick way to very realistically cut down on your duplication. And you get 3-4 catches with a handful of yards and a touchdown. Or you get one big play with a touchdown out of Ferguson, and you're off and running. It's just how it works. So out of the gate, I like that one over on FanDuel. And I was just trying to make things work on DK and see where I could get the dupes to with this one, and got it down to 2. I don't know what the volume is going to look like for Mechie. Obviously, Jaden Blue is a total wild card there and might be a little bit high projected. But the idea of just getting that down to 2 dupes in an entry field that is significantly larger than what FanDuel's got. Again, you're dealing with $1 million first place over here and a $200,000 first place over there, but there are 100,000 more entries in that DraftKings contest to contend with. That's leaving $600 on the board. It's going with Smith in the captain role, which again, really like that. A lot of upside there. Got both quarterbacks, got another primary receiver, and then the 2 wild cards. So again, you don't have to be completely bananas with what you do in that captain spot if you're just getting a little bit different but still realistic with a couple of your flex guys. And you get a little bit different but not total craziness in that captain spot. Let's see what Saquon lineups look like just for starting. 16-8 to start with leaves us with 66 already per spot left. So I would be probably inclined to immediately say this would be a lineup that would be good to maybe consider some kicker defense type angles on, just because they're significantly more affordable through the middle here, while giving you some realistic expectation for scoring. If it's going to be a grindy, Saquon seeing some touches, burning some clock, you could see the Eagles defense being somewhat valuable in that scenario, and also Elliott, but to a degree, Aubrey on the other side as well. And grab something from them. Let's do that. Now I'm at 79 a spot. I gained back a little bit of salary by going that way. Obviously, I need to get quarterback in here. So again, on the volume quarterback, especially with Saquon in the captain role, I want my rushing touchdowns for the Eagles to go through Saquon. So I think it's more important to me to get Dak in the captain spot there, or in the as a quarterback here. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to Jalen. but I only have so much salary to spend, and I want to put a correlated receiver with Dak here. So I'm probably not getting to Jalen. And it's almost certainly going to be George Pickens at 8, given the 74 kind of works. Not sure where we're going to come in on dupes on this one. That leaves me at 68. Goddard would be an obvious spot there at 64. We probably would benefit from leaving some money on the table, though, with this lineup. Help things get a little bit different. If you wanted to ride the theme of kicker and defense, there would honestly be nothing wrong with doing that. It's still 18 dupes, though. That's what would be wrong with doing that. Leaving 2,400 on the table and still being copied 18 times. Again, if you're splitting $1 million 18 ways, you're really not going to show up tomorrow to the baseball show complaining about it. But we could probably do better. I mean, the shortcut would probably be to do this with Mechie. Yeah, it's going to cut it down to sub 5. Again, I don't know how realistic that Mechie option is going to be. You've also got Turpin and Tolbert. Oof, Turpin's popular. Is Tolbert less popular? Interesting. Tolbert less popular. I could see that as an angle. It gets it down under 10. Again, not all that dissimilar from the other number we saw, but it cut it in half. There's enough realistic upside to think that Tolbert will still have, in the right situation, a couple opportunities to score and definitely a few targets, even with the new competition in town. That's reasonable. I don't hate that. This is actually what I want to do. That saves a lot of money. If you just use Ferguson as Dak's correlated scoring option and just, obviously we're going to see plenty of volume and points go through CD and Pickens. And our hope here would be that we're getting the touchdowns going to Ferg. And maybe there's only, 2 of them and he catches both. And now I gain 96 here. And now I got a lot of options. I can get AJ in there if I wanted. I still can't get Hurts. What happens if I put AJ in? It's 31 dupes, but that's a fairly high-end option. Obviously, though, the best path here would be to leave more money on the table. Maybe it does become Ferg and Pickens. What does that look like? 23. You could probably improve on that Aubrey spot then. Yeah, it's still 24 dupes, though. It's just such a big goddamn field. Keep in mind, this is with Saquon and the captain. So there's only so far we're going to be able to drive this down. I think we landed on the lowest possible combinations when we got down to like 4 or when we were at 9 with that other one with Tolbert in it. You can obviously leave a lot more money on the table, but I mean, this is reasonable. Again, if you're splitting $1 million 25 ways, like it's not the ideal. It's not what we're shooting for, but you're also not really going to complain about it. And that was a decent lineup. What else you guys want to see? Captain America bleeds. What's going on? Yo, Terry with the content factory. Cubs fan saying Prince drafted 3 tight ends and 2 defenses in season long last night. That's an approach. I had never in my life drafted a backup tight end until this year, and then I did it in back-to-back drafts. I did it in both drafts this year. I'm going to end up probably dropping one of the 2 in the other one, but I couldn't bring myself to draft the defense over the remaining options that were on the board. And typically I'll take an IR guy and stash him, but EMAC took my IR guy right at the last minute. So I just emergency ended up with a second tight end that I'll probably end up cutting going into this weekend because they do need a defense. And the other one, I just, we have such big rosters that it just kind of was the right pick. Anyway, what else? What do we want to see in the captain spot? What does a Jake Ferguson captain on DK look like? Let's see what that comes together as. We obviously want Dak with that. We'll take Jalen with that. 74 apiece. Give me Devontae with Jalen. This would lean into Jalen's passing upside. 74 left. Probably want to leave some salary. That's not an unreasonable option. I like that little 3-man group. You gain a little upside there in an offbeat kind of approach to the Cowboys. There's probably a better way to put this together, though. If I reclaim that spot and have 9, you get Pickens in there at 8 and leave 1,000. That'll probably push it up lineup-wise. 16. Ah, 10-8. Damn. I thought that was going to get there. I was curious to see that. Could go AJ in that configuration and just buy all kinds of passing upside. Oh, I have Ferguson in there twice. My bad. No wonder that didn't work. 64. Got her 64 already. You could. I keep skipping over Javonte Williams, who's staring me in the face at a fair price right there. And that's not a bad way to go at 54. He's going to be popular and probably more popular and higher on than more same thing. Probably more popular than I would want most of the time. I don't think that buys us enough. We're only down at 22 dupes here. Back to the drawing board. For Dak, Hurts, Goddard. Man, Pickens makes so much sense right there, though. What if we go high-low? Can we get CD? And then $5,000. I don't want to run the Philly defense against what is more of a Dallas passing stack here, though. Could run Aubrey alongside this one. Yeah, it's still 18. Again, playable. Nothing wrong with it. Don't love it. I'm trying not to just default to like the cheapo easy. You're like, oh, I cut it down to 1 dupe because I put in Darius Cooper, Kylan Granson, or whatever. But like a Turpin, a Tolbert, I think there's a little bit more realistic. A Dotson, Mechie. These guys do have a little bit of reality to them. If you go like Mechie at 38, you gain back to 72, which falls kind of in between. Nah, you got to get cheaper than that. Does Turpin get us there? Oof. Man, Turpin's DraftKings number must be high. What is that number? I grabbed it without and just plugged it into the spreadsheet here. I didn't really go person by person to see exactly what everybody was sitting at, but that must be a large number. Wow, it is. 20+% projected for Turpin on DK. Significant. So our lower owned guys are sub 10s. More the Tolberts, Blue, Dotson, Shipley, Mechies of the world. You do have a little tiny bit of ownership on like Cooper and the very bottom of the barrel types. But again, I would tend to stay away from those guys. You need multiple pieces to break. That is, to a degree, how you can get to a truly unique lineup. But again, you need so many things to break. There is a line to be walked between like getting different, getting out on a limb, but still having that limb be attached to the tree rather than just snapping off and plummeting to your doom, if you follow. So I tend to stay more toward the realistic rather than the I need several things to befall these guys before my guy even hits the field in any realistic way. So let me put that back there. I'm still not satisfied with this one. 3,000 obviously makes it pretty challenging. Would it be Shipley time there? That cuts it sub 10. That would be this, Shipley and Shoemaker here would be toward the bottom end of what I'm talking about as far as existing opportunity. But Shipley is expected to be the true number 2. So you're getting both the running backs there. You're getting all of the rushing touchdown upside, which is pretty significant from the Eagles. And then you're getting 2 pass catchers along with Dak. This is still duped 9 times, but again, we're dealing with a gigantic field. And this pares it down pretty aggressively. Obviously, you got a long shot there in Shipley. You got a little bit more money to spend. You could go different directions. So what did you do that? And then 26. And come back the other way with, that would be a weird one. Ferguson and the captain and the backup tight end in the other spot. That is not an advisable lineup. It's lightly playable, but the odds are pretty against you in that one. But again, obviously, this lineup is coming together with several of the absolute highest owned pieces just to see how far down we can push them by doing different things around them. Yeah, Shipley falling in the end zone, not the craziest thing. Absolutely. 5 to 8 carries if he sees that. Maybe a catch. I don't think is the craziest expectation, especially week 1. Saquon didn't play through the preseason. It's going to be a little ramp up for everybody. So if you're going to be hunting for backup touches and a little bit more depth, this is a good week to be doing it. If you're going to be hunting for an ugly game, again, with some kicking and defense being involved, this is a good week to be doing it. So, Cap, real quick, nothing wrong with, you want to take your angle and take your no sweat bets and chase a little bit of Dallas. Again, I love the passing volume with Dallas. I do think they can hang in this game. I think they're probably, they're offensively anyway, a little bit better than they might be getting credit for in that implied team total. But what you don't want to do is what you're saying there. Dak is 8-2 versus the Eagles with a 100+ passer rating in his career games versus them. So you're talking about, 10 games over multiple seasons in which the Philadelphia defense is completely different, in which Dak himself is completely different, in which his pass catchers and his line are completely different. So I know people cite things like that all the time for betting, but at a point, you're just talking about Dak versus the color green. And that's just not a thing. Philadelphia had the top-ranked pass defense in the league last year, and not that much is going to change this year. So, yeah, he's beaten them in the past. Yeah, he's been good. But be cautious when you get into going back any further than just immediate recent history. Much more so in football than a lot of other sports. But in general, there is very little to, over the last 6 years, he's done this against that team. Well, all right, who was wearing the uniform? What were the conditions that day? Was everybody on the opposing team healthy any of those days? There's so many different variables that, again, you're just talking about how he does against their laundry. And that's not really the way you want to play it. But there are plenty of reasons to expect that they can hang. So if you want to go that route, and as long as you're getting the right price on that bet, no problem, especially if it's a no-sweat bet. Hey, by the way, speaking of no sweat, I haven't really been mentioning it too much, but scrolling across your screen down there, promo code kickoff over at the site, rotoscouts.com, gets you a $15 first month on a new subscription. You don't have to be a first-time subscriber. That's just if you're coming back, if you're first time, whatever. The first month of this new monthly plan will be $15. That's 50 cents a day. That includes baseball and football. Anything else that hits that site in the meantime. After that, the next couple months, you'll add basketball and hockey to that. Hockey first, then basketball. All 4 major sports. Regular price under $1 a day for access to everything. No per sport pricing. We're trying to keep money in your pocket, build your bankroll, not take it out. We're not charging hundreds of dollars per sport, plus XYZ, et cetera, et cetera. Trying to keep it light, trying to be friendly. DFS for the people around here. That's what I say. Caps, no sweat. Exactly. That's it. FanDuel, by the way, if you guys haven't spotted, the $5 milli on FanDuel on Sunday is a money back. If you don't cash, they give you your money back in site credit for that $5 entry for the milli. Milli up top, $5. You get your $5 back for every entry that doesn't cash. Pretty good offer out of FanDuel starting out the season. Obviously, what I'm expecting is that their week 2 contest is going to go from $5 to $15, and you're going to artificially cut that in a third anyway. But we'll see what they do. Seems like a good offer. Anything you guys want to see on DK up top? I was going to do that other Devonta, but we kind of already did that one. Want to go like a kicker captain? Like a Brandon Aubrey captain? It's a pretty good kicker. I can't help myself on these two. Like, just grab the differentiated captain kicker and then the next 2 most ridiculously popular guys and see what you can do. 6,800 apiece. Let's not do that. Let's try and make this one truly different. Do like Devontae. This is going to shake things up. I do at least want... Man, I'm leaning into the Cowboys artificially here, and I don't like it. 12-4, I can get Jalen in that lineup. I could also get Saquon in that lineup, and I'm down at 7 dupes. Holy shit. Really good lineup. That'll work. I mean, damn. All you need is Jaden Blue to touch the ball like at all for that lineup to kind of work. And obviously, Aubrey's got to kick a few through the uprights for you. Dak with Pickens. I like that. Getting Saquon in there, kind of a surprise. You could obviously, in the same configuration, you can grab Jalen, and you're at 3 and change, and you get the correlation between Jalen and Smith, and you still retain a lot of the upside for a rushing touchdown out of Jalen. I think we stumbled across an interesting little configuration here. Let's see how much of it rides on actually on Jalen Blue. Like if we just spend it all and have Dallas Goedert there, we're still 8 dupes. That isn't bad. That's a super viable lineup. I like that one. I think I would play that. We like that one, guys? That's worth a roll. Everybody loves a kicker captain. Start week 1 outright with something stupid. Cap saying Dak MVP and pray. 8Game, you found it? 8Game saying didn't immediately see where to add the promo code. Should be in the once you hit the payment window there with whatever your payment mechanism is. By the way, it asks you guys to fill out like contact info. That's there by default, and I can't make it go away. I promise not selling your name or your contact details to anybody. We're not on people's radar for that yet. Maybe one day in the hundreds of thousands of subscribers, when we're rolling in the millions and the billions and whatnot, and we've got affiliate sites and 400 employees and everything, and we're charging hundreds of dollars per sport, maybe then we'll start selling your data. Right now, I don't even know where it goes on the site. It just goes into the database somewhere. But yeah, apologies. I know that's annoying. Kind of like this one though, guys. I really do. Kicker captain is an angle, and it works. That is a lower owned, high quality lineup. Let's see what a DAC captaincy looks like for cap. Let's give Dak, CD, and Ferguson to work with. And then I get 68. Can I get like a Jalen Goddard, and we'll double up tight ends. And then we get real cheap and different. And we got to get we're down back to the Turpin, who is highly owned. That's going to break our 26. Him being highly owned is really annoying for this exercise as far as getting that dupe number down. He's very cheap, and he is worth taking in that spot. I just realized the White Sox lineup finally came in. Let me grab this real quick. Baseball slate's about to start. This lineup just dropped, though. Edgar Quero in the leadoff spot. Wow, catcher leadoff for the White Sox. Edgar Quero, Kyle Teal. Now that is a catcher configuration to get excited about. If you're on yesterday's baseball show, you heard me ranting and raving about having a cheap catcher in the leadoff spot who gets on base and what it could mean for an opportunity. I don't think it became relevant at all. But two of them up there today. Save this guy. Bear with me. We'll be right back to that lineup momentarily. Just got to throw this up on the website. And so many clicks for every last little thing that needs to go up here. And upload the table, and then you got to put the link in there, and then it drives me bananas. It's probably like an AI that I could have where I can just click go, post this for me after I'm done with it, and it would actually take care of all the stupid clicking and posting itself. Anyway, we're back. That's uploaded to the site. All the lineups for baseball are now in. So with Turpin in there, it gets a little broken on that ownership number. So maybe if we pare down Goddard, you go Hurts just kind of naked with the maybe like Jake Elliott and take just the upside of throwing the kicker in there, which is interesting because of Hurts's just unique scoring upside on the ground. He doesn't necessarily need his receivers to have a big game, which is not common among quarterbacks. That buys us back to 5,100 here. So we go with Jaden Blue, who we know is pretty low owned, little cheat to get us under 10 there. If we did that and we didn't go to Elliott, though, you could play the Mechie game in there at 38, or obviously Dotson a little cheaper at 32. And those guys are very low owned. And that brings you way down. Oops. Obviously, if you're to do that, now we're really cheating. 77. Damn. Oof, 44. Damn. All right, so that was Sub 10. We were lower through a couple of those iterations as I was going through that. What did I end up with? Dak, Pickens, Aubrey, Hurts, AJ, Dotson. That's an interesting configuration. Leaves 100 on the table. It's still duped 9 times, but again, that's gotten down there somewhat. It just brings it down to 8 with Elliott in that spot. And again, you can't get Elliott and Mechie. Ooh, 16. I don't like that. If we go there and defenses are popular. Well, there are a couple different configurations through that one that work. I think Dak Captain is viable, and you can cut it down at least sub 10 and be, reasonable shot at some upside. You get it sub 10, you got a shot at 100K. You get it further down than that, your profitability goes up. Let's throw we did a Saquon. I don't think we did a Hurts, but it's going to be largely the same exercise as DAL. Well, it'll be largely the same as Saquon, actually, but I guess it's worth doing. Again, I typically think that with the multiplier, your quarterbacks are better spent in the flex spot, but that is not to say that you can't go this route and that you shouldn't have lineups that do. You definitely want to do that. But it makes it a little bit more difficult most of the time. They tend to be the highest priced. So I keep defaulting to Smith. You can go either way with that, obviously, but the $1,000 price difference does make a little bit of a dent there. So we can get 2 pass catchers in with him. Should be easy enough. Go for a wipeout and try and get the kicker as well. And now we're at 71 apiece on the other side. So we could easily say Pickens and something. Depending on what we want to do on the other side of this lineup, if we're leaning Eagles wipeout, to me, that means that Dallas is going to be throwing the ball. So you're probably not as inclined to go toward like a Javonte. You want to get a piece of the passing game, but you're not going to, well, maybe we can get Dak. Dak and, Jake. That does work. That's 35 dupes, but that's a very reasonable lineup for a Hurts captaincy. Again, a lot of that is bent by having him so popular up there. But that's not a bad first effort. And it gets us a lot of correlated, logical approach to correlation there. Probably a real easy way to get different with it would be to do this. Yeah, it cuts it down to 14 already. And we've got plenty of money to change out, say, Jake Elliott for something at 63. Actually, you know what? Let's leave Jake and swap out. What can we get instead of Goddard? There's a frustrating gap, like right here, price-wise. This 52, 54, and only one guy in the 6s and nobody in the 7s is annoying. Because it's got 83 to spend, and it's just leading me right to Pickens. Smith, I've already got in the lineup. I feel like there should be 1 or 2 more options in that price range that should be usable. But again, leaving money on the table is absolutely a strong strategy here, so we'll look at what that looks like. Hurts, Devonta, Elliott. Is that what I just had a minute ago? I think it is. This would actually be an interesting spot to work in one of the alternate depth type receivers since we've got the Hurts captaincy. So like a Dotson in there obviously does a lot to knock that down. We're still over 10, but we're at least approaching it. Obviously plenty of money to spend to shake up like the 2 kicker spots that we used, make things different. Now we got her back in there. Now you're talking real wipeout there. And 65. It's like Dak and maybe back to Aubrey. Does that do anything? 12 and change. It's really challenging with anybody of significant popularity up there to get this sub 10. If you get like a Devontae, though, that goes back to the point of like take the second tier skill player, the wide receiver 2, and put him in that captain, the tight end 1, put him in that captain spot instead of the quarterback, instead of the WR1, the running back 1. And just gets a little bit different, and it immediately makes it so much easier to get this down below 10 dupes. Quality Soul, I think we did one already with Devontae in there, but you do another one. Forget what I put into it. I'll probably end up building the exact same lineup. So I would naturally want to go that route. I think it's probably exactly what I did. And then I'll try and do something completely different. Like Jaden Blue. I probably didn't put him in that lineup. I think what it really is the lack of a pricey running back on the Cowboys. It's what's creating that gap. That's where the absence of somebody up here is. Maybe in 2 weeks, Javonte is more in the 7s and 8s. Let's see if we can put him in too, though. This would be a unique kind of a build. All right, if we're expecting the Eagles to bottle the pass up a little bit, maybe that kind of approach makes sense. And now I've got 11-2. I can afford Saquon in this lineup. Kind of works. We're already at 21 dupes. Let's see what it does. Ooh. Sub 10. See, again, the power of just putting somebody as good as Devonta Smith in that spot. And even in a lineup that includes Jalen and Saquon, the kicker, and then a pair of running backs from the same team, which isn't necessarily the best approach, but could work out. Sub 10. And again, you got to get with could work out. You got to get with possible on a showdown slate. A little bit more so than what we're hunting for usually, which is probable. We do want to embrace possible for showdown. That became a little interesting lineup there at the end. Sure thing, quality. And rewind to when I started building lineups because I'm positive I had another Devontae build in there as well. Let me throw a couple FanDuel lineups in. I'll do it over here too. So same concept there with that pairing. And then 83. Let's see what FanDuel will actually let us get away with. Quite a bit, it turns out. Yeah, that's fine. That works. Leaves 1,800 on the board. It's duped fewer than 3 times, apparently. Smith, Hurts, Dak, Pickens, Ferguson, and Goddard. Double tight end configuration. Both quarterbacks, primary pass catchers, or secondary pass catchers on both teams. I like that lineup a lot. Would play enthusiastically. Pickens already in there. Not crazy. One dupe, one and change. Not crazy. Smith, Hurts, Saquon, Dak, Ferguson, and then Dotson as your wild card. Not crazy. Solid depth of target on Dotson. He's in no way reliable, might not even see a target, but at least a little realistic expectation that as, the wide receiver 3-4, that he would. Not bad. Even with the multiplier, FanDuel still easier. Lone Wolf, what's going on, bud? Cujo's here. 6:53 on your clocks. We've been rolling for a little bit. Hour 20. This is not hour 20 of this show. This is an hour and 20 minutes into this show. Important distinction. Blues out. Well, that's a change. Let's see what other... Jaden Blue inactive for Thursday as of 3 minutes ago. Way to be on top of it. Quality sold. We'll get that updated on the site in a couple of minutes when we punch out of this one. Any other requests? FanDuel captain, DraftKings captain. We got to obviously scratch those Jaden Blue lineups out of your head. So one would expect that that's going to mean a bit of an uptick from Miles Sanders in the backup role. And then, Lepke will go up naturally, but it's still going to be lingering in like the unlikely for touches 1.5 kind of range, I think. But now a little bit more meat on the bone. And yeah, Javonte obviously is going to get the lion's share of that probably now. It'll just shave down the amount that he's not on the field and not expected to carry the ball. Sanders again last year, just 3.7 yards per rush attempt, but that is the same number that Javonte put up. We kind of flew through Sanders before. Didn't play after week 10 last year. No, actually came back week 18 against Atlanta. Carried the ball 17 times for 66 and a touchdown. Also caught 3 passes for 50 yards and a touchdown. As demonstrated by that week, can get it done. Throughout the rest of the season last year was very insignificant as far as contributions. Did do a little bit more work in the passing game. Couple games, 2-3 catches here and there, and then spiked an outlier in week 8 against Denver. Had 7 catches for 38 yards that week. Caught all 7 of his targets, 5.4 yards per target that week. But overall, limited action. But maybe you catch him as a underappreciated correlated scoring option with Dak, who now would gain a little bit of additional upside, given that he will be the number 2 on the depth chart. Definitely makes Sanders more interesting than he was 4 minutes ago. So far, I think that's the only surprise, right? I haven't seen anything else. Juwan Jennings, when asked if he was happy with his new deal with the Niners, I like money. Don't you like money? Solid quote. I don't think that's something we're captaining, but obviously, we snuck Jaden Blue into a couple spots in that one at 5 and Sanders at 4. Definitely makes things work there a little bit. And again, with his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, that does become a little bit interesting / sneaky as a late in the game pairing here with Dak, late in our processes, building lineups in the run up to lock. Not totally uninteresting. Let's see what that does for like don't actually like where that went. I got a little greedy. 23 there. Forces me to go Shipley route. And we're down to 8 dupes, but that's probably not our best approach. But you could easily get the top 2 skill player options there and have 39, which would realistically get you Mechie in that mix, which isn't completely terrible. I don't love 2 pass catchers without the quarterback. But that is a pretty low dupes number for a pretty high-end lineup up that way. Way to do that probably would be this, and then something like that. That isn't bad. Aubrey in with a Dak Pickens Sanders trio, and then Saquon and Smith on the other side of it. It's still, again, 11 dupes, but that is near the bottom of what we can realistically cut down to it. You just saw one that got further down, but was less realistic. Again, you do want to walk that line a little bit. The more lineups you build, the more that you can build with some of those wild card, less realistic type things and chase the outlier performances, chase the very top of the board. But those big ties do still pay the bills pretty nicely. Get another one done on FanDuel, and then we'll probably punch out. Power, I would love that. I'm all over Jake Ferguson. I got him on one of my fantasy teams. I am invested in Jake Ferguson's success, at least to start the season this week. So, yeah, let's do it. Sounds good to me. I had a Jake Ferguson MVP lineup in when we flipped over to the builder page originally, so I won't build another one of those. We just did Devontae. Let's see what we got to go pricey. See what a stupid $21,000 Saquon lineup looks like on FanDuel. It's probably still easy enough. Sub 5 dupes. Leaves 1,000 on the table. You could take Elliott out and put Javonte in that spot. 7-ish dupes. Again, I keep kind of leaning into the Dallas side of this one unintentionally. Not really as on Dallas as it might seem, but they are the easier building blocks here. Let's try not to do that, though. What's our best path to it? Jalen captain with Saquon. Is that doable? And I would still want another pass catcher in here, but we can get it cheaper. We'd probably go Goddard. 66. This works. In fact, that works so well that you could probably just do this. This is probably greedy. 19, yeah, then you're getting thin. But if you just go like pass catcher, running back, you double up on those opportunities. And then 61. Get like Elliott in there at 58. Sub 10 still. I don't love it. It's a much smaller field on FanDuel. We want to cut that number further down. And that's why it's easier on FanDuel to get down into the, the threes, the fours. Not completely terrible at 8 and change, but there are paths to making that lower. But this also, again, has this Eagles wipeout up top that looks pretty solid. Then you could change that out, honestly. If you go this route, you can get all 3 of the Eagle stars. I mean, just ride the backup play there, and now we're back up to 71 for our last spot. Gives me, you could access Javonte there and leave a little money on the table. Ooh, that's still 9, though. That's surprising. And that'll go up a little bit with the ownership changes, too. Over Javonte Sanders. This would be a not great lineup. I don't love the path there. I just want to see what the ownership. Sub 3 is definitely helpful. This is a less than likely path through all 3 of those guys, though. That's just getting greedy, though, trying to get all 3 of Hurts, Saquon, and AJ in there. Jim saying, hi, can you play 2 kickers in one lineup and 2 defenses in another one? Yeah, absolutely can. You're looking for specific game scripts if you're doubling up, especially if you're doubling up the defenses. But a lot of the defense play also does come down to those really become slate winners when there's a defensive score rather than like via holding the other team completely off the board. You pad it with sacks and interceptions and everything. But it is a lot of the time about a defense that can come away with a pick 6, a big kick return or whatever the case may be. So it does ride on the defense really most of the time, actually putting the ball in the end zone for the team. So to have that twice does become a little bit more dicey. But where it can work out is, you don't need it fully twice that way, because if the first one goes off, then the second one can act as just a filler spot and it scores, its usual median type projection and just comes along for the ride. 2 kickers, I think, is probably the slightly more realistic, especially, again, just going back to the idea that this is a week 1 game between 2 teams that largely did not play their starters in the preseason. So I think we could see some kicking. We've also got a pair of good kickers in this game to boot, so that helps. So yeah, I think that's a reasonable route. I think either of the kickers as a captain MVP is viable. I would say between the defenses, if you're captaining or MVPing one, it's probably Philly. The significantly better defense, and the defense with the much better pass defense. So if you're just thinking in terms of the ability to intercept the ball, take it back, again, not necessarily likely, but that would be, kind of my thinking along that. To counter that, though, Dallas had the much better pass rush last year. That's leaving a pretty penny on the table. Didn't necessarily intend to do that. Leaving 6,700 on the table. We're at 6 dupes, but I don't think we want to leave quite that much. I don't remember what the other competing scores were, but I feel like they were probably higher. We can do better than this. Let's see. I mean, that's certainly a lane. Still at 12-ish dupes. But again, you are pulling it down. That's 91 is quite a bit higher than that other one was. So you're bringing it down fairly significantly, and I went, straight line through some of the most popular plays in those other spots, so you could cheapen that up ownership-wise pretty easily. And then like your double kicker pairing. And I don't know if you intended to go kickers in the captain or just in flex rolls, but you do something like this. I fell short of Jalen that way. But not if I change that out, I don't think, right? 10-2, do I get there? No, I don't. Damn. All right, so the best path to doing that would be both of the WR2s. And now I can get Jalen by $100. Ooh, that's sub 6. 5.56 dupes. Double kicker captain. And we had a kicker captain with Aubrey up there, I think, earlier. That was also very low owned. And I think a little bit more interesting for lack of the second kicker in it. But this is, I screwed that up. I left CD in it when I meant to have the quarterback in. So I actually have more money than I thought. Well, this remains a definitely viable lineup. It was just I screwed up what I was trying to build, but that's not uninteresting going that route. But what I meant to do was that. And then I can actually, I think, get what I was originally trying. What do we have? 76. Yeah, so it's probably better the other way around. That leaves 1,000 on the table. You get AJ and Pickens in there with both quarterbacks. Again, both those kickers. Eh, 16. I was hoping that would come out a little bit lower, just swapping Pickens up to the top spot, moving the kicker back down, and then moving AJ over to Devonta. But we actually gain ownership that way. We gain points, but we also gain ownership. You can see what, just moving pieces in and out of different spots and how it influences that dupes number and how it influences just your angle into carving out as much of the win for yourself as you can while staying likely. If you can build a 100% you're on your own little island lineup, it's great, fantastic, well done. But the idea of being able to do that in 176,000 entry field and have something that's actually viable and likely, if you're playing with the luxury of having an unlimited bankroll where you can play mathematically perfect game theory all the time and not worry about extended losses, and then sure, yeah, you can chase the outlier lineups a little bit harder than I think the people that we're talking to, that we're trying to cater to. So we want to play within the bounds of reality a little bit while getting it as unique as possible. 16 is high. We've seen some lower ones, but these have been all pretty playable lineups in my opinion. Jim saying the Eagles is captain. You want all four of those things? Is that what you're asking for? Both kickers and the defense? Now we're getting out on a limb. I don't know if this is what you were asking for, but you could do whatever you wanted, Why is the Eagles defense price not coming up? Oh, I deleted that? Oops. I deleted that at some point by accident. So you're leaving quite a bit of money on the table there while still throwing in the next two most expensive guys. I don't think this is what you actually meant to do, but fun way to end the show. I wouldn't play that lineup. I mean, it's not completely dead. All those things are viable, but that's probably unlikely to come together with a win. You can see how far off projection-wise it is. With that all in mind, guys, 7:13. Time does this slate actually start? Is it 8:30? 8:20. So right about an hour from game time. Hour 40 into our one-game show. Hopefully you guys got something out of it. It was fun. Good slate to get back in the saddle on. Start out a little bit slow with the one game. We'll be back tomorrow to talk through a Friday football game. We'll also have a much longer baseball show, I'm sure, because it's probably a 14-game baseball slate tomorrow. Haven't looked at it yet. So that'll be fun. Stick around. Pay attention to the various posts and the announcements. Subscribe to the channel here. Follow on Twitter. I announce all the different shows at the @RotoScouts Twitter handle. Scrolling across your screen at the bottom, $15 monthly. It's just the first month of a subscription. So you don't have to be a first-time subscriber. It just has to be a new subscription. 33% off that month, 50 cents a day. Gets you access for football, baseball, basketball, and hockey will be included in that same plan once they start. Not my fault they're not running right now. But trying to bring that price into a nice little spot to start the season. Find a few new subscribers out there. Tell your friends. Share the word. Let's not keep this a secret from everybody. It's a nice little club we've got going here, but let's grow it a little bit. So spread the word, retweet when I send things out if you get the chance. Hit the like button down here. Subscribe to the channel if you've never done that before. There's also a new thing called Hype. Hype this channel if you get the chance. I don't think it costs you anything. If it does, don't worry about it. I think it's free. You just click, yes, I want to hype this or whatever. That apparently helps small channels grow to larger channels. It's a new feature that YouTube's rolling out, so I would really appreciate that. Follow the @RotoScouts Twitter handle. And with that in mind, guys, I think we're going to end here. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. Let's go take down a giant pot tonight. Right? I mean, we're definitely going to be taking down some pot tonight. But let's take down a giant pot tonight. Somebody go win themselves. I'd love to see a milli. But a nice chunk of a milli. Let's get a nice little win share out there. I'm shooting for it over on FanDuel. Come along with me. Joker's excited about it. He's hacking on something over there. Good luck. Somebody go win something. Share those results when you do, and we will be back for more tomorrow. I'm going to try and find a landing spot for the quarterbacks and stack show, but first week we're probably just going to end up doing a marathon through all the games for the main slate and do it the old-fashioned way. Stay tuned, gang. Or not right now, but stay tuned for those announcements for when those shows land, and we will see you tomorrow. Later. I need to stop talking. See ya.